The morning sun cast long shadows across the rocky terrain of planet Delta 7 as Captain Lisa Hayes adjusted her rifle scope. Her team moved like ghosts through the canyon, each step calculated and silent. Hayes had earned her reputation through countless missions like this one. The galaxy knew her name. The galaxy feared her name. "Movement ahead, Captain," whispered Sergeant Pete Collins through the comm system. His voice carried the respect that all soldiers showed when speaking to Hayes. She was legend. She was unbeatable. Hayes raised her hand, signaling the team to halt. Through her scope, she could see the Corvan patrol moving along the ridge. The aliens moved with military precision, their blue-scaled skin gleaming in the alien sunlight. They carried weapons that could cut through human armor like paper, but Hayes had faced Corvans before. She always won. "Standard formation," Hayes commanded quietly. "Rodriguez, take the left flank. Collins, right side. Turner, you're with me down the middle." The soldiers moved into position without question. Hayes had never lost a battle. Her tactical mind was sharper than any computer. Her reflexes were faster than any human had a right to be. At least, that's what everyone believed. The truth was different. The woman crouching behind the rocks was not Captain Lisa Hayes. She was Lieutenant Amy Clark, a junior officer who had volunteered for the most dangerous mission of her life. For 6 months, she had been trained, conditioned, and prepared to become someone else. Someone the Corvans wanted desperately to capture. Amy remembered her briefing with the real Lisa Hayes. The actual captain was a brilliant strategist, but not the superhuman warrior the propaganda made her out to be. Earth's military had spent years building the myth of Lisa Hayes. They had spread stories of impossible victories and incredible feats. They had created a legend so powerful that the Corvans believed removing her would cripple humanity's war effort. "Contact in 30 seconds, Amy whispered, staying in character. Her heart pounded, but her voice remained steady. The psychological conditioning had worked. She believed she was Hayes. She felt like Hayes. She would fight like Hayes. The Corvan patrol was now visible to all team members. 12 aliens armed with plasma rifles moved in tight formation. They were professional soldiers, not the random raiders Earth's colonies usually faced. These Corvans had come looking for something specific. "Execute," Amy commanded. The battle began with coordinated precision. Collins opened fire from the right, his bullets finding their mark in alien armor. Rodriguez moved left, using the rocks for cover as return fire lit up the canyon. Turner provided support, his heavy weapon keeping the Corvans pinned down. Amy moved through the chaos like a dancer. Every step, every shot, every tactical decision had been rehearsed 1,000 times. She needed to fight exactly as the legendary Hayes would fight. The Corvans were watching. They were studying her movements, her tactics, her leadership style. 3 down, reported Rodriguez. 9 still active. "Hold positions," Amy ordered. "Let them come to us." This was the critical moment. Intelligence reports suggested the Corvans had been planning something big. They had been studying human military leaders for months. Amy's mission was to give them exactly what they wanted while gathering information about their capabilities. The Corvan return fire was devastating. Their plasma weapons turned rocks into glass and metal into vapor. But Amy's team held their ground, fighting with the discipline that had made human soldiers respected across the galaxy. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they refused to break. "Captain," Turner's voice carried urgency. "Movement behind us, lots of movement." Amy spun around to see what her tactical displays had missed. Corvan soldiers were emerging from concealed positions throughout the canyon. They had been waiting. This was not a random encounter. This was a trap specifically designed for Lisa Hayes. "Ambush," Amy announced calmly. "All units, defensive positions. Prepare for extraction." But there would be no extraction. Amy knew the plan. Her team knew. The plan, though they believed it was a real mission gone wrong. The Corvans had superior numbers and superior technology. The legendary Hayes would fight to the end, protecting her soldiers until the last possible moment. The battle intensified. Plasma bolts filled the air like deadly rain. Collins cried out as alien fire found its mark, his armor smoking but still intact. Rodriguez was pinned down behind crumbling rock formations. Turner's heavy weapon was running low on ammunition. "Sir," Rodriguez called out, "we need to go, now." Amy looked around at her soldiers. These were good men who trusted her completely. They believed they were following the greatest soldier in human history into battle. The guilt was almost overwhelming, but the mission required this sacrifice. "Negative," Amy replied. "We hold this position." She raised her rifle and continued firing. Every shot had to count. Every movement had to reinforce the image of Captain Hayes. The Corvins were recording everything, studying her tactics for weaknesses they could exploit in future battles. The alien fire grew more concentrated. They were not trying to kill her quickly. They wanted her alive. Intelligence had been correct. The Corvins believed capturing Hayes would give them a significant advantage in the war. "Rodriguez is down," Turner reported. "Collins is wounded. Captain, we cannot hold." Amy assessed the tactical situation with cold military precision. Her team was finished. The Corvins had overwhelming superiority. A real evacuation would require air support that was not coming. The mission parameters were clear. "Cover me," Amy ordered. "I'm going for Rodriguez." She sprinted across the open ground, drawing heavy fire from the Corvin positions. Her movements were perfect, exactly what the legendary Hayes would do. She reached Rodriguez, who was unconscious, but breathing. The young soldier had followed her into this trap without question. Corvin soldiers were closing in from multiple directions. Amy could see their blue-scaled faces through her scope. They moved with professional confidence, knowing they had won. Their weapons were trained on her position, but they were not firing to kill. "Surrender, human," a voice called out in accented English. "You are surrounded. Your soldiers need medical attention." Amy looked at her wounded team. Collins was bleeding but stable. Rodriguez needed immediate care. Turner was down to his sidearm. The mission was entering its final phase. She raised her hand slowly, dropping her rifle. "I am Captain Lisa Hayes," she announced clearly. "I surrender under the terms of the Galactic War Conventions." The Corvins moved forward cautiously. They had captured their prize. They believed they held the key to defeating humanity in their grasp. They had no idea they had just walked into the most elaborate trap in military history. The Corvin interrogation chamber was cold and sterile. Amy sat strapped to a metal chair, her wrists bound with energy restraints that hummed with alien technology. The room smelled of ozone and something else she could not identify. Fear, perhaps, or maybe that was just her own. War Commander Zeth Korvac entered the chamber with the confidence of a predator. His blue scales gleamed under the harsh lights, and his yellow eyes studied Amy with obvious satisfaction. Behind him walked two guards, carrying weapons that could kill her in seconds. "Captain Lisa Hayes," Korvac said, his voice carrying a strange, musical quality. "The legendary human warrior. You are smaller than I expected." Amy raised her head and met his gaze. The conditioning kicked in automatically. She was Hayes. She felt Hayes's confidence, Hayes's defiance, Hayes's absolute refusal to break under pressure. "War Commander Korvac," she replied calmly. "Your reputation precedes you, though I heard you were taller." The Corvin's eyes narrowed. His species valued strength and courage above all else. He had expected fear from his prisoner. Instead, he found mockery. "You humans have interesting ways of facing death," Korvac observed. "Tell me, Captain, how many of my soldiers have you killed?" "Not enough, apparently," Amy answered. "Since I'm sitting here talking to you." Korvac gestured to one of his guards. The alien stepped forward and activated a device that sent electrical pain through Amy's body. She gritted her teeth but refused to cry out. Hayes would never show weakness. "Your colonies are under attack at this moment," Korvac continued. "My fleets are destroying your settlements while you sit helpless in this chair. Tell me where your main military bases are located, and I will order them to spare the civilians." Amy had been prepared for this moment. The false information had been carefully crafted by Earth's best intelligence officers. She needed to seem reluctant to talk but not completely silent. The Corvins had to believe they were breaking her slowly. "Go to hell," she said simply. Another jolt of electricity coursed through her body. This time she allowed herself to gasp in pain. The torture had to appear effective or the Corvins would become suspicious. Your defiance is admirable, Korvac admitted, but ultimately pointless. We have studied your species for months. We know your weaknesses. You care too much for individual lives. He activated a wall screen that showed footage of Corvin ships attacking a human colony. Amy watched civilians running for shelter while alien weapons reduced buildings to rubble. The images were real. People were dying while she sat in this chair. Stop the attack, she said quietly. I'll give you what you want. Tactical codes for Sector 7, Korvac demanded. Defense positions for your colonies in that region. Amy hesitated for exactly the right amount of time. Too quick and he would suspect deception. Too long and more people would die needlessly. Authorization code Delta 77 Alpha, she said finally. Defense platforms are positioned at coordinates 127.4 by 88.9. Fleet strength is approximately 40 ships. Korvac immediately relayed the information to his military staff. Amy knew the coordinates were real, but the defense platforms had been moved 2 days ago. The fleet strength was actually 70 ships, not 40. When the Corvins attacked based on her intelligence, they would walk into a carefully prepared ambush. Very good, Korvac said with satisfaction. You see how easy this becomes when you cooperate? Hours passed. Amy provided a steady stream of carefully crafted lies mixed with just enough truth to make them believable. She gave them outdated patrol schedules, false supply routes, and fictional military codes. Each piece of information was designed to lead Corvin forces into traps that Earth's military had been preparing for months. Between interrogation sessions, Amy was held in a small cell that gave her a view of the Corvin fleet. She counted ships, studied their formations, and memorized their communication patterns. Everything she observed would be valuable intelligence if she survived to report it. During one session, Korvac brought news that made Amy's heart race with genuine excitement. Your intelligence has proven most valuable, he announced. My forces successfully attacked 3 of your military installations using the information you provided. Many human soldiers are dead because of your cooperation. Amy allowed herself to look devastated. In reality, she knew those installations had been evacuated before the attacks. The Corvins had destroyed empty buildings while Earth's real military forces moved into position for the next phase of the plan. You monster, she whispered, playing her role perfectly. I am a soldier, Korvac replied, just as you are. The difference is that I am winning. As days passed, Amy noticed changes in the Corvin crew. They seemed more confident, more relaxed. Her false intelligence was working exactly as planned. The aliens believed they were gaining significant advantages in the war. What they did not know was that every piece of information Amy provided was part of a larger strategy designed by the real Lisa Hayes. The actual captain was sitting in a hidden command center on Earth, orchestrating a deception that spanned multiple star systems. Tell me about your backup plans, Korvac demanded during another session. What happens when your colonies fall? Amy pretended to struggle against giving up the information. She allowed tears to form in her eyes as she spoke. Emergency protocol. 7, she said quietly. All remaining forces fall back to the Sol system, final defense line at Jupiter's moons. This was perhaps the most important lie of all. Earth's real plan involved no retreat whatsoever. While the Corvins prepared for a siege of humanity's home system, Earth's military would launch coordinated attacks on Corvin supply lines and command centers. Interesting, Korvac mused. Your leaders are more practical than I expected. They would abandon the outer colonies to save the homeworld. We protect what we can protect, Amy replied, her voice heavy with apparent defeat. The war commander seemed satisfied with her answer. He believed he was seeing the legendary Lisa Hayes finally breaking under the weight of her failures. The psychological warfare was working in both directions, though only Amy knew it. Late at night, alone in her cell, Amy allowed herself to think about her real identity. She was not a legendary warrior. She was Lieutenant Amy Clark, a communications specialist who had volunteered for an insane mission. But with each passing day, She felt more like the person she was pretending to be. The conditioning had been more thorough than she had realized. Hayes's memories, Hayes's tactical knowledge, Hayes's personality had all been implanted in her mind. She was becoming the legend even as she worked to destroy the enemy who had created that legend. Tomorrow would bring new interrogations, new opportunities to feed false intelligence to the Corvan military. Amy settled into her uncomfortable cot and tried to sleep. She had work to do, and the fate of humanity depended on her ability to keep lying convincingly. Outside her cell, the Corvan fleet continued its journey toward what they believed would be final victory. They had no idea they were flying into the greatest military trap in galactic history. The real Lisa Hayes stood before a massive tactical display in Earth's most secret command center. The underground facility stretched for miles beneath the Rocky Mountains, filled with the most advanced military technology humanity had ever built. Officers and technicians worked at dozens of stations, coordinating a war effort that spanned half the galaxy. "Update on the Corvan fleet positions," Hayes commanded. Her voice carried the authority that had made her Earth's youngest general, though few people knew her real rank or location. "They're following the false intelligence perfectly, General," reported Colonel Jake Norton. "3 Corvan battle groups have moved to attack positions based on Lieutenant Clark's information. They have no idea they're walking into our trap." Hayes studied the display showing Corvan ship movements. Every red dot represented an enemy vessel moving exactly where Amy's carefully crafted lies had directed them. The deception was working better than anyone had dared hope. "What's the status on our colonial defenses?" Hayes asked. "All evacuations completed 12 hours ahead of schedule," answered Commander Beth Price. "The Corvans attacked empty installations. While our real defensive positions remained hidden, civilian casualties are minimal." Hayes nodded with satisfaction. The hardest part of the plan had been allowing the enemy to appear successful. Every fake victory had to look real enough to maintain the deception while actually causing as little damage as possible. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Tony Carter from his communication station. "We're receiving a priority message from the Corvan fleet. They're demanding tactical information about our Jupiter defense lines." "Perfect," Hayes replied. "That means Lieutenant Clark is maintaining her cover. Send the prepared response to our hidden relay station. Make sure the Corvans intercept it, exactly 17 minutes from now." The message was another carefully planned deception. It would appear to be secret orders to Earth's Jupiter garrison, but the Corvans were meant to intercept and decode it. The false intelligence would convince them that humanity was preparing for a desperate last stand at their home system. Meanwhile, Earth's real military forces were moving into attack positions throughout Corvan space. Admiral Kate Sullivan commanded a strike force that would hit Corvan supply depots. General Rita Bell led ground forces that would capture key communication centers. The aliens would never see the attacks coming. "General," interrupted Major Dan Rivers, "we're getting reports from our deep space scouts. The Corvan home fleet is beginning to move toward Sol system just as we predicted." Hayes smiled grimly. The enemy was committing their most powerful ships to what they believed would be the final battle. In reality, they were removing their strongest forces from positions where they could do real damage. "How long until they reach our outer sensor grid?" Hayes asked. "Approximately 72 hours at their current speed," Rivers replied. "They're bringing everything they have." "Good. That gives us time to complete Phase 2. Hayes turned to address the entire command center. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to begin the most complex military operation in human history. Every detail must be perfect. The lives of millions depend on our success." The tactical display shifted to show Earth's secret weapon deployments. For months, hidden platforms had been constructed at strategic points throughout the solar system. The Corvans expected to find desperate defenders protecting their homeworld. Instead, they would encounter coordinated ambush positions that would destroy their fleet in detail. "Update from Lieutenant Clark?" Hayes inquired. She transmitted her daily intelligence report 6 hours ago, Norton replied. "The Corvans are completely convinced they have the real you. War Commander Korvac believes he's broken Earth's greatest military asset." Hayes felt a moment of respect for the young officer who had volunteered for such a dangerous mission. Amy. Clark had transformed herself completely, becoming someone else so thoroughly that even the enemy believed the deception. Any indication that they suspect the truth? Hayes asked. None whatsoever. Clark is performing flawlessly. She's even managed to gather intelligence about Corvin ship capabilities and command structure. Her reports have been invaluable. The next phase of the operation was already beginning. Human strike forces throughout the galaxy received their final orders simultaneously. The attacks would be precisely coordinated to prevent the Corvins from communicating warnings between their scattered fleets. Admiral Sullivan reports ready for Phase 2, announced Price. All strike teams are in position. General Bell confirms ground forces are ready, added Carter. Marine units are standing by for simultaneous assault on 12 Corvin installations. Hayes took a deep breath. Everything they had worked for came down to the next few hours. If the timing was wrong, if any part of the deception failed, Earth could lose the war entirely. Execute Phase 2, she ordered. Across the galaxy, human forces launched their coordinated attack. Sullivan's fleet emerged from hyperspace directly above a major Corvin supply depot, catching the defenders completely by surprise. Bell's Marines stormed communication centers that had been left vulnerable while Corvin forces chased shadows in empty space. The tactical display updated in real time as reports flooded in. Green indicators showed successful human attacks. Red marks indicated Corvin positions under assault. The enemy had been caught completely off guard. Corvin supply depot at Vega 7 has surrendered, reported Norton. Admiral Sullivan captured the entire facility intact. Ground assault at Corvin Command Base 14 successful, added Price. General Bell's forces control their primary communication hub for this sector. Hayes watched the battle unfold with professional satisfaction. The Corvins had prepared for a war against legendary human heroes. Instead, they faced coordinated attacks by ordinary soldiers who had been trained to work together perfectly. Sir, we're intercepting Corvin military communications, Carter announced. They're trying to recall their fleets, but most of their command centers are under attack. The messages aren't getting through. This was exactly what Hayes had hoped. 4. The Corvin military was highly centralized, depending on clear command structures and reliable communications. By attacking their command centers first, Earth's forces had essentially blinded the enemy fleet. What's the status of War Commander Korvac's fleet? Hayes asked. Still moving toward Sol system at maximum speed, Rivers replied. They have no idea their home bases are under attack. Lieutenant Clark's deception is holding perfectly. Hayes studied the tactical situation with growing confidence. The Corvins were about to lose their most powerful fleet while their supply lines collapsed. Behind them, it was a strategic disaster of unprecedented proportions. Prepare Phase 3, Hayes ordered. Signal all units to begin final attack positions, and send a message to Lieutenant Clark. It's time for her to begin the extraction protocol. The message would be disguised as routine fleet communications, but Amy would recognize the coded signal. Her part in the deception was almost complete. Soon, she would reveal her true identity to the Corvins in a final psychological blow that would shatter their confidence completely. Hayes turned back to the tactical display, watching red enemy markers disappear one by one. The greatest military deception in history was succeeding beyond their wildest expectations. Soon, the galaxy would learn that Earth's strength came not from legendary heroes, but from ordinary people working together with extraordinary dedication. War Commander Zeth Korvac stared at the tactical displays aboard his flagship with growing unease. Reports from across the galaxy painted a disturbing picture. Human forces had launched coordinated attacks against Corvin installations while his fleet pursued what should have been a decisive victory. Sir, reported his intelligence officer, we've lost contact with Supply Depot 7, Command Base 14, and the communication hub at Rigel Station, all within the same 6-hour period. Korvac's scaled hands clenched into fists. Such coordinated attacks suggested level of planning and coordination that should have been impossible while Earth's greatest military leader sat in his prison cell. Bring the prisoner, he ordered. I want to speak with Captain Hayes immediately. Minutes later, Amy was escorted into the command chamber under heavy guard. She had been preparing for this moment since receiving the coded message from Earth. The extraction protocol was about to begin, but first she had one final performance to give. You wanted to see me? Amy asked with the weary defiance that had characterized her portrayal of Hayes. Your people are attacking our installations, Korvac accused. How is this possible when I have their greatest commander in custody? Amy allowed genuine confusion to cross her face. What attacks? You told me the colonies were surrendering. Korvac activated the main display, showing reports of human military successes across multiple star systems. Amy studied the information, with apparent growing amazement, though she had helped plan most of these operations. Impossible, she whispered, playing her role perfectly. The outer colonies don't have this kind of coordination unless... She trailed off as if realizing something important. Korvac leaned forward eagerly. Unless what? He demanded. The backup protocols, Amy said slowly. If something happened, to me, command would pass to the secondary leadership structure, but they weren't supposed to be this effective. This was another carefully crafted lie. Amy needed to maintain the fiction that she was truly Hayes, while explaining why human forces were suddenly performing so well. The explanation had to satisfy Corvin expectations while hiding the real truth. Who leads this secondary structure? Korvac asked. General Carter, Admiral Walsh, Colonel Morrison, Amy replied, giving names of fictional officers. They're good soldiers, but they lack experience in coordinated operations. This level of success shouldn't be possible. Korvac studied her carefully. His yellow eyes searched her face for signs of deception, but Amy's conditioning held perfectly. She believed her own lies deeply enough to pass any scrutiny. Perhaps you underestimated your own training methods, the war commander suggested. Your subordinates learned more than you realized. Maybe, Amy agreed reluctantly. But some of these attacks hit targets that weren't in our primary intelligence files. Someone has been gathering information we didn't have. This comment was designed to plant seeds of paranoia in Korvac's mind. If human forces knew about secret Corvin installations, it suggested the aliens had been infiltrated or their communications compromised. Return her to her cell, Korvac ordered. Double the guard. I want to know everything about these attacks. As Amy was escorted away, she caught sight of the tactical displays showing Corvin fleet positions. The enemy was exactly where Earth's strategists had predicted they would be. The final phase of the deception was about to begin. Back in her cell, Amy began preparing for what would be the most dangerous part of her mission. The extraction protocol required her to break free and gather specific intelligence about the flagship's defenses. She would have to fight her way through enemy territory while maintaining her cover identity. Hours later, the ship's emergency alarms began blaring. Amy smiled grimly as she heard explosions echoing through the hull. Earth's strike forces had found the Corvin fleet just as planned. All hands to battle stations, announced the ship's communication system. We are under attack by human forces. Amy used the confusion to begin her escape attempt. The energy restraints on her cell door had a weakness that Earth's intelligence services had discovered months ago. A precise electromagnetic pulse, generated by overloading her uniform's communication device, would disable the lock for exactly 30 seconds. The cell door slid open silently. Amy stepped into the corridor and immediately encountered two Corvin guards running toward their battle stations. She needed to disable them quickly and quietly. Years of combat training took over as she engaged the first guard. His plasma rifle was powerful but unwieldy in close quarters. Amy disarmed him with moves that Captain Hayes had been famous for, then used his own weapon to stun the second guard. Security breach on detention level 7, she heard over the ship's communication system. The human prisoner has escaped. Amy moved through the ship's corridors with purpose. Every step had been planned based on intelligence gathered during her weeks in captivity. She needed to reach the main computer core and plant tracking devices that would allow Earth's forces to monitor Corvin fleet communications. The ship shuddered as more explosions rocked the hull. Through viewports, Amy could see human fighters, engaging Corvin defense craft in spectacular space battles. The real war had finally begun. "Stop right there, human," called a voice from behind her. Amy turned to see a Corvin officer pointing a weapon at her. This was not part of the plan. She needed to maintain her cover while completing her mission. I am Captain Lisa Hayes of Earth. Defense Forces, she announced formally. I am attempting to return to my own people during this battle. You are our prisoner, the officer replied. Return to your cell immediately. I think not, Amy said calmly. The fight was brief but intense. The Corvin officer was skilled and experienced, but Amy had been trained to fight exactly as the legendary Hayes would fight. Every move reinforced her cover identity while achieving practical results. Minutes later, she stood over the unconscious alien and continued toward the computer core. The ship's corridors were largely empty as crew members rushed to battle stations, giving her the opportunity she needed. The computer core was protected by advanced security systems, but Amy had been prepared for this challenge. She activated a small device that had been surgically implanted under her skin months ago. The device would hack into Corvin systems and plant tracking software throughout their fleet network. Intruder in Computer Core 7, announced the ship's security system. All security teams respond immediately. Amy had what she needed. The tracking devices were planted and already beginning to transmit intelligence back to Earth's forces. Now she needed to complete the final phase of her mission. She made her way toward the main hangar bay, fighting through corridors filled with emergency lighting and the sounds of battle. Several times she encountered Corvin's security teams, but each fight only reinforced her reputation as the unstoppable Captain Hayes. The hangar bay was in chaos when she arrived. Corvin fighters were launching and landing constantly while damage control teams worked to repair battle damage. Amy needed to reach the communication center adjacent to the hangar. This was where she would finally reveal the truth to War Commander Korvac. The psychological impact would be devastating when he learned that Earth's greatest deception had been carried out by a simple lieutenant who had volunteered to become someone else. Amy activated the hangar's communication system and sent a message directly to the command bridge. War Commander Korvac, she announced clearly. This is your prisoner requesting permission to address you directly. She could almost imagine the alien's confusion as he received the message. Captain Hayes was supposed to be securely confined, not broadcasting from his own hangar bay. How did you escape? Came Korvac's reply over the communication system. Amy smiled as she prepared to deliver the final blow to Corvin morale. That's an interesting question, she replied. But first, let me tell you who I really am. Amy stood in the chaos of the Corvin hangar bay, surrounded by the sounds of battle and emergency alarms. Through the communication system, she could feel War Commander Korvac's attention focused entirely on her words. This was the moment everything had been building toward. My name is Lieutenant Amy Clark of Earth Defense Communications, she announced clearly. I am not Captain Lisa Hayes. I have never been Captain Lisa Hayes. For the past several weeks, I have been feeding you carefully crafted lies designed to lead your forces into traps. Silence filled the communication channel. Amy could imagine Korvac's reaction as the implications of her words sank in. Everything he believed about the war, about Earth's military capabilities, about his own success was built on deception. Impossible. Korvac's voice finally came through the speakers. You fought like Hayes. You knew military secrets that only she would know. I was trained for 6 months to become her, Amy explained. Every memory, every tactical decision, every response was carefully implanted in my mind. Your intelligence services were so focused on the legend of Lisa Hayes that you never considered she might not be real. The hangar bay shook as explosions rocked the ship. Through the viewport, Amy could see human fighters pressing their attack with devastating effectiveness. The battle was going exactly as Earth's strategists had planned. The military codes you gave us, Korvac said desperately. The troop positions, the tactical information, it led to successful attacks. It led to attacks on empty buildings and abandoned positions, Amy corrected. Every piece of intelligence I provided was designed to waste your resources while Earth's real military forces moved into position. You've been fighting shadows while we prepared to destroy your fleet. Lieutenant Chris Morgan's voice suddenly crackled through Amy's personal communication device. Amy, this is Rescue Team Alpha. We're in the hangar bay. Where are you? Amy looked around to see human soldiers in combat armor emerging from a captured Corvin fighter. The rescue team had arrived exactly on schedule, just as the plan required. "Right. Here," she called out, then spoke into the general communication system. "War Commander, I believe my ride has arrived." The Corvin response was immediate and desperate. Security teams began flooding into the hangar bay, but they were too late. Sergeant Rita Bell and Corporal Dan Rivers provided covering fire while Chris Morgan's team secured the area. "Move, move, move," Morgan shouted. "We have incoming hostiles from all directions." Amy ran toward the rescue team, but she was not finished with her psychological warfare. She needed to deliver one final blow to Corvin morale. "Korvac," she called through the communication system while plasma bolts filled the air around her. "Ask yourself this question. If I was just a decoy, where is the real Lisa Hayes? What has she been doing while you wasted weeks interrogating a lieutenant?" The rescue team's fighter was already powered up and ready for launch. Amy dove through the hatch as Morgan sealed it behind her. The ship lifted off immediately, weaving through defensive fire from Corvin weapon emplacements. Through the fighter's viewports, Amy could see the full scope of the battle surrounding them. Dozens of human ships engaged Corvin forces in a fight that had been months in the planning. Every human attack was coordinated perfectly, while the Corvin fleet struggled to respond to threats from multiple directions. "Status report," Amy requested as the fighter cleared the Corvin flagship's defensive perimeter. "Complete success across all fronts," Morgan reported. "Admiral Sullivan's forces have captured or destroyed every major Corvin supply depot in this sector. General Bell's ground troops controlled 12 communication centers. The enemy fleet is cut off from reinforcements and unable to coordinate their response." Amy nodded with satisfaction. The deception had worked even better than they had hoped. The Corvins had committed their most powerful fleet to what they believed would be a decisive battle, only to discover they were walking into the most elaborate trap in military history. "What about casualties?" Amy asked. "Minimal on our side," answered Sergeant Bell. "The Corvins were so focused on their pursuit of Hayes that they left their home bases virtually undefended. Most installations surrendered without significant fighting." The fighter rendezvoused with a human cruiser commanded by Admiral Kate Sullivan. Amy was transferred aboard and immediately taken to the medical bay for evaluation. Weeks of captivity and psychological conditioning had taken their toll, but she was physically unharmed. "Lieutenant Clark," Sullivan said as she visited Amy in the medical bay, "I want you to know that your sacrifice made this victory possible. Without your performance, the Corvins would never have been drawn into such a vulnerable position." Amy looked out through the medical bay viewport at the ongoing battle. Corvin ships were surrendering in groups as their commanders realized the hopelessness of their situation. War Commander Korvac's flagship was surrounded by human vessels demanding his immediate surrender. "Has he responded to our surrender demands?" Amy asked. "Not yet," Sullivan replied. "But our intelligence suggests he's in complete shock. Learning that he was deceived so thoroughly has apparently shattered his confidence in Corvin intelligence capabilities." Hours later, Amy learned that Korvac had performed a ritual suicide rather than face the disgrace of being outmaneuvered so completely. Other Corvin commanders had begun requesting ceasefire negotiations, recognizing that their position was hopeless. The journey back to Earth took several days. During that time, Amy gradually readjusted to her real identity. The high psychological conditioning that had made her into Lisa Hayes was carefully reversed by Earth's medical specialists. "How do you feel?" asked Dr. Jane Walsh during one of their sessions. "Strange," Amy admitted. "For weeks I really believed I was someone else. I felt like Hayes, thought like Hayes, even dreamed like Hayes. Coming back to being myself is harder than I expected." "That's completely normal," Dr. Walsh assured her. "The conditioning was necessarily thorough to maintain the deception, but you're recovering quickly." When they finally reached Earth, Amy was amazed to discover that news of the victory had spread throughout human space. The successful deception had become legendary, proving that humanity's strength came not from individual heroes, but from ordinary people willing to make extraordinary sacrifices. The real Lisa Hayes met Amy personally when she arrived at Earth Defense Headquarters. The general was smaller than Amy had expected, more thoughtful and less dramatic than the propaganda made her seem. "Thank you," Hayes said simply. You became me better than I ever could have. What happens now? Amy asked. Now you become yourself again, Hayes replied, though I suspect you'll find that being Amy Clark, the woman who fooled an entire alien empire, is just as impressive as being the legendary Lisa Hayes. The war with the Corvins ended within weeks. The psychological impact of learning they had been so thoroughly deceived destroyed their confidence in their own military capabilities. Most Corvin commanders requested negotiated settlements rather than risk similar deceptions in future battles. Amy was promoted to major and given command of Earth's new Deception Operations Division. Her first assignment was training other volunteers to become decoys for various fictional human military leaders. The strategy that had worked so well against the Corvins would be refined and used again when necessary. Standing in her new office, looking out at Earth's blue skies, Amy reflected on her journey from communications lieutenant to legendary deceiver. She had volunteered for a mission that required her to become someone else completely, and in doing so, she had discovered who she really was. The galaxy now knew that humanity's greatest strength was not any single individual, but their ability to work together in ways their enemies could not predict or counter. The legend of Lisa Hayes would continue, but now everyone understood that the real heroes were ordinary people willing to do extraordinary things when their world needed them. Amy Clark had proven that point better than anyone could have imagined.